Now we have with us Dmitry Babish, political analyst at The Voice of Russia, joining us from Moscow. Sir, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Now, as I mentioned, a joint declaration. What are the prospects of getting a joint declaration at the end of the G20 summit? As I mentioned earlier as well, they seem to be at odds over the wording when it comes to some geopolitical situations and some really pressing issues.
Well, I think the chances for agreeing on the most difficult topic on Ukraine, these chances are very small. And it's no coincidence that the Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Chinese leader Xi Jinping didn't come to this summit. In no way it shows disrespect for India. It just shows the tension between the global West and the countries that want to stay sovereign and independent, and they face a more and more ideologized approach from the West. Let me remind you that in their early years in power, Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping traveled a lot. Their children studied abroad in Western countries. So it was not Putin's choice. It was not the choice of Xi Jinping that relations became so tense. I think it was primarily the consequence of a more and more exclusive, non-inclusive approach of the global West. And certainly in this situation, just talking personally to Mr. Biden doesn't make sense, neither for Putin nor for Xi, because there are not going to be any changes in Biden's position. He's, in that sense, he is a hostage to his ideology. That's what I would say.
Right. Now, Mr. Babish, as I spelled out the other likely scenarios as well, what sort of a consensus do you think can be reached?
Not on Ukraine, certainly, because the position of the West has been very, I would say, radical. I mean, in Russia, you can have differences of views on this war. For example, I can say that in a formal way, certainly President Putin breached certain international rules when he made his order on the 24th of February 2022. But let's see it in the context. The West has been breaching rules for all the preceding 30 years, since its invasion of Yugoslavia and since many things that it did in Iraq and in Syria and many other places. So in that sense, Russia was just reacting. It was not provoking tensions. And of course, Russia will not accept the Western mantra that this was some kind of unprovoked aggression from Russia, as they say. In that sense, China is with Russia, not because China wants, to invade Taiwan, or because China is an autocracy and China doesn't like Ukraine. No, China is just angry about this double standard approach of the West. The West has one standard for itself. The West can invade Yugoslavia and Iraq and Syria and other countries, and Libya, and Russia and China have to stay, in their borders without exerting any influence abroad. Any influence that they exert is immediately met with resistance by the West and its allies. So this is not the kind of world that would suit not only Russia and China, but many other countries which strive to be independent and which strive to be sovereign. In order to understand better the situation, let me remind you that India was very unhappy when the United States supported Pakistan in the 70s, despite lots of terrorist acts from the side of Pakistan. In the same way, the fact that the West is completely on the side of Ukraine, equipping it with cluster weapons, with depleted uranium, artillery shells. Of course, this makes Russians angry, because not only Russia committed cruel acts in Ukraine, Ukrainians, before the war committed lots of terrorist acts. And you can read it even in the Western press. Read the latest article by The Economist entitled "Inside Ukraine's Assassination Program." Please just type these words and you will see that article.
All right. Well, Mr. Babish, thank you so much for joining us on WION World is One with your insights on this. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.